This is the story of Tom Kench, the demon from below. In this video, I'm going to show you a dark tale of greed, gluttony, overindulgence, and the smooth-talking archdemon at the head of it all. Starting with the covetous River King and the tales that were spread of a demon with an unhinged maw so wide he could swallow his victims whole, who resided deep below the river bends. The waterways of Valoran are old, but far older still is the demon Tom Kench. From muddy gambling tents along the Serpentine River, through the salt-crusted dice halls of Bilgewater, to the gilded wagering tables of Piltover and Zon. All those who have given a covetous glance to another's wealth know the unending hunger that comes from an encounter with the River King. The first tales of the creature were told by a traveling people who plied the Serpentine. They warned of a giant fish with a cavernous mouth who would lure in the dissatisfied with the promise of more. One such story was that of a young man, renowned for his honesty, though born to the ways of a raftsman. He desired a life beyond the poor banks he knew so well, and the River King promised him an unforgettable experience if only he would tell one little lie. It seemed harmless enough, so the raftsman bent the truth in conversation with his own brother. That night the demon appeared, revealing a fork in the river the raftsman had never noticed before. He followed it to a camp of foreign folk who offered him food and drink and fresh companionship. As dawn neared and the raftsman was full and ready to return to his people, the demon appeared again, promising an even greater experience for another lie. His interest had piqued. The man accepted the bargain, telling falsehoods to his hosts. The river parted again, and he followed it to another evening of even greater luxury. This continued night after night, until the once honest raftsman's deceits came as easily as breathing. When the river finally emptied into the sea, he found himself alone and lost. There was no one left to lie to. So many dark choices, all of them his own, had left the raftsman with no way back home. The brackish rivers of the mainland carried the tales of the River King to the Blue Flame Isles, where the creature gained a name as his legend grew, Tom Kench. In Bilgewater, fortunes are boom or bust, with as much wealth going out with the tide as comes in. Many a tavern yarn tells of an old Tom Kench, a demon of the water, with an unending appetite for games of chance, such that the loquacious beast became a symbol for many of the city's gambling dens and houses of sin. Once the sun gates opened, easy trade from Bilgewater to Piltover. Tales of Tom Kench became more common in the city of progress and its underbelly, Zon. Their children know Tom as Two Coats, a fish so monstrously large that he wears two fine jackets stitched together with a jaunty top hat and a smile wider than the pilt itself. He drives the jealousies of young artificers. It is said he came one progress day to a struggling Piltovian inventor and offered her an idea certain to make a wealthy clan take notice, and he asked her in return was a single lock of her hair. The ambitious woman made the trade, and true enough, her work landed her a lucrative contract. But one invention would not satisfy, and Two Coats wandered by, this time asking for all of her lovely braids. Not wishing to disappoint her new patrons, the inventor agreed, and Two Coats ate them up on the spot. Still, the woman was unable to find the one great invention that would make her name. The demon came again, offering a deal that would take the tip of one finger. The following week, it was an ear. A year passed, and by then there was very little of the woman to give. Finally, she called Two Coats herself, begging him to make it all stop. He laughed as he opened his jaws wide, telling her he would protect her from herself, and promptly swallowed her whole. This biography of the covetous demon known as Tom Kench tells of his power to grant any wish at a cost. This shows why he is an archdemon, for this power requires a very potent form of demonic magic. This is also why I believe he is the demon of obsession, though if you want to know more, I go in depth in my previous video talking of the Demon King, Fiddlesticks. This also shows the dark path he leaves in his wake, made of those foolish enough to follow the demon right into his cavernous jaws. Although I do have 2 more stories, thankfully voiced by someone much more dynamic than myself. One of a gambler who signed a contract he did not truly understand and paid the full price at the cost of everything, who tricks the gambler's bride to go willingly with no more than a silver tongue.
Into a sunken town, the handsome gambler ran, for he owed gold and blood, and yet had none to spare. Desperate and forlorn, he was about to change his path and walk away, when he heard a song that called on him to chance his luck again. Now the singer was a creature with the biggest mouth the gambler had ever seen. Excuse my song, the monstrous siren said. The tune's purpose was your attention, for I knew you had troubles, and I can offer absolutions. Can you carry me from this bind? The youth asked. Boy, the world's one river, and I'm its king. Ain't no place I ain't been, ain't no place I can't go again. And the price is a minuscule thing. See, I got hungers that ain't easily fed, but those finest tables, they ain't never got a seat for me. So I need men like yourself to let me in. Now the gambler's only hunger was dice and cards, so this bargain, it seemed too easy a price. If you're offering a ticket, the youth finally said, that's a deal I will take. And before another word was spoke, the monster snapped him up and fled. To a faraway land the gambler was conveyed. At a palace of chance, he was left. Years passed, and love the gambler found. His bride, a princess, and the wedding none would miss. Now when that hungry beast finally did arise, the family screamed and fought, and although the gambler tried to cast him out, it ate the gifts, and house, and gold. For its hunger, nothing satisfied. Please, not now, not this time, the bride did cry. The beast's response, to her it purred. This hunger's a burden, but it's the last time, I swear. So please, forgive. Now the creature's lies, so melodic and sincere, charmed that bride, and thus she failed to recognize when that demon's jaw unhinged. She screamed just once as I snapped her bones and crushed her limbs. Now that meal, it left me satisfied. So cry if you want, boy, 'cause you had a chance to walk away. Instead, you're the fool who let me in.
One day, I find myself with this one coin. What I ought to do was pay my debts and find a new crew to join. I was a harpooner, see. Should have put aside whatever was left for the future. Been responsible like. Harpooning's a harsh life, even for a younger man. But that's when the River King found me. Why work someone else's ship, he says. Slaving away, risking your life for next to nothing, when you might as well have a ship of your own. I just had to think bigger like, of course. One kraken won't buy a ship, but he had an answer to that, didn't he? Dice. One good throw to bones, and I'd have enough to start me own little operation. Others could do the danger work, while I sits back, nice and plum-like, enjoying the profits. And after a few more drinks, you understand that crooked devil's advice. It starts to make a lot of sense to my ears. So blinded by greed and possibility, I went along with it. That night were a blur. I awoke well after noon the next day, my head fairly pounded. Had no idea where I was in fancy, bawdy house. As it turns out, but on the dresser were me previous night's winnings, more than enough to purchase myself a ship. But the River King, he'd given me a taste of something more. Why should young Laz content himself with a single ship when he ought to have a fleet? Just needed to chance my hand a few more times. That's Bilgewater. There's riches to be had if you're willing to risk everything, over and over. With old Two Coats' arm around me, I was led from the dice tables to another halls of avarice, from backroom card games to gambling and betting parlors. High and low I spent a fortune, lost a fortune, then made it all back again. Around and around in that alluring spiral I went. I was feeling the hunger, the yearning, and it was pulling me down like a whirlpool. Years passed, and somewhere along the way, I'm ashamed to say I forgot what I was doing this all for. I forgot who I was. I had it all, but it never were enough. I wanted more. And then I started losing big. That made me double down, go for broke, all or nothing. Looking for the big stakes to put me back on top. Pretty soon, I was in a worse state than I'd started with. Sleeping in the gutter, catching rats to eat if I were lucky. I begged, borrowed, and stole from everyone who'd shown me any kindness. Lost all me mates chasing the dream. He feeds on misery, see. Does Tom Kench as old as sin he is, and older than Bilgewater by far. Been round from the start of things, gorging himself on the desperation what comes, with the greed and sorrow in men's hearts. I mean, I'd done it to myself, but it was him that give me the means. You might say he took me to the cliff's edge, but I were the numpty that threw myself off, and that old glutton reveled in me despair. Came to me once more, he did, when I was at my very lowest, drinking from puddles, having sold me own leg to be used for chum. In the darkest night, whispering a Cajun, he pressed this gold kraken back into my hand with a knowing wink. 'Twere the same one I'd had back at the start. It were this damn coin that started me on that wretched path. Hey, he opened his mouth up wide and says, "It's not too late, Laz. Never too late. Come with me, and we'll find you a fortune again." Even after everything, I was tempted. Of course I was. But no. I resisted, mother. Serpent knows how. Two Coats only laughed. Said he'd be there when I changed my mind. And sure enough, the temptation's still there now. Every day. So here I am, friendless, broke. All the best years of me life behind me. Wasted in those lost decades. Can't remember most of it neither. So I've no idea if I even enjoyed myself. Anyways, enough of my rambling. There's a lesson to be learned. Keep your purse strings tight and never, ever make a deal with the River King. He always got more to lose. This is a cautionary tale to appreciate what you have. 'Cause if you don't, the River King will be lurking, waiting for that moment to snatch you up in those forsaken, unhinged jaws.